Alrighty, let's get right into it. This is episode 10 of Shankism, the Punic Wars. Oh, all right, so let's start talking about it. All right, so the Punic is Latin for Punicia or Phoenicia. If you remember, okay, the Phoenicians. So the Punic Wars are fought between Rome and Carthage, not to be confused with Cartilage. Carthage had been a colony of Phoenicia. So if you remember the Phoenicians, they are the trading people of the Mediterranean. This is like way back in the 1800s, but now we're fast forwarding and we're about the 200s BC. Okay, and they had become the regional power by controlling the rich iron trade. Okay, so this major city in North Africa called Carthage becomes a dominant force that Rome will have to reckon with. So you want to write down the First Punic War. Okay, the First Punic War. And as you see from this map here, Rome doesn't really own a whole lot just yet. Okay, they own pretty much the Apennine Peninsula, which we know the Italian boot. And what you see in purple is what the Carthaginians own. Most of North Africa, Corsica, Sardinia, Sicily, and a little bit of Spain, southern Spain there. Okay, Hamilcar Barca is kind of the ringleader here. All right, so causes here. The years you can write down just to get a frame of reference. So it's 264 to 241 BCE. The causes. What caused this conflict? Well, first, Rome feared Carthaginian domination of Sicily. So it's all, this first war is all based around Sicily, where Italy is kicking that Sicilian ball, if you will. Two, Carthage attacked Messina. Okay, and if you look at back here, that little like greenish area, or sorry, that little like above the greenish area, that like kind of neutral territory there, that is Messina. So it's really, really close to both of them. And they're both kind of looking for who's kind of going to be in control of this little area here, who wants it. Okay, Rome's very close, and so is Carthage. So Carthage will eventually attack Messina, long story short. Messina will call on the aid of Rome, and they're just basically looking for an excuse to go fight each other. And this will involve both Carthage and Rome. Long story short, Rome is the victor, and they will get Sicily, they will get Corsica, and they will get Sardinia, and that will all go to Rome. Carthage will has to give money to Rome, kind of for starting this war. It's like reparations. Carthage will lose much of its former power because of this. Okay, and if you remember Hamilcar Barca is the Carthaginian leader, the Carthaginian general during this. He is mad. He is like, this is like a disgrace. He is like this esteemed general, and he wants to get territory back. He wants to redeem himself for this blunder because he definitely shouldn't have lost. It was an upset for sure. Okay, so he's going to come into play here. Okay, so the Second Punic War you want to write down. You want to write the years 218 to 201 B.C.E. B.C.E. stands for before the Common Era. Okay, and as you see in the picture, yes, we will be talking about war elephants and crossing the Alps with Hannibal, not Hamilcar, Hannibal. So after the First Punic War, Carthage expanded further into Spain and continued to grow wealthier. So now, as you see here, Rome owns up into the Alps. They own Corsica, which would be right to my left, that little island on the top there, and to the southern region right by my eye would be Sardinia. And don't forget, they got Sicily. They got Sicily kicking that right there. All right. So Hamilcar, the Carthaginian general, wants to take back the territory that he had. Okay, he's looking to to regain power. Anytime you have land, you get power. You get money. And so they start conquering in Spain. Okay, kind of their ultimate goal was to kind of approach them because they're definitely not what they once were. Carthage, that is. Okay, they're still powerful, but they're trying to regain that power. So the causes. Carthage will continue to move. Now, they'll move into Spain. This is kind of what one of the main focal points is. You know, the first Punic War was fought over Sicily. The second Punic War is going to be fought over Spain and into Roman territory. So Carthage moved into Spain to recover territory and money. And Hamilcar is doing this. Hamilcar Barca will die, but he has a son. His son is Hannibal. Hannibal, from a young age, basically swore an oath to a blood oath. If you've ever done a blood oath, where basically he cuts into his hand and swears on his blood, on his grave, that he will always try to destroy Rome because he embarrassed his family, embarrassed his father, And so if the Hamilcar dies, Hannibal, the son, will take over. So Carthage attacked the city of Saguntum. There's a city, if you look back here, okay, it's right on this outer edge, right where my eye is at, right there. Saguntum's about that area, and this is an ally of Rome at this point, okay? And they'll call on the aid, again, calling on the aid of Rome. If they're kind of an ally, like, hey, you said you'd help us, come help us. And because Carthage had been moving further and further into Spain, and eventually they were going to meet with the Romans here. Okay, that's what Spain looks like today, the outline of Spain and Portugal, if you don't know. Well, Hannibal keeps moving and keeps moving and keeps moving. And they kind of block off, the Romans do, they block off any potential sea battle that's really going to happen. So this is kind of why Hamilcar starts moving in there, and Hannibal takes over, moving closer by land, closer and closer to Rome. And what they're going to do is they're going to cross the Alps. And as I've told you before, the Alps are spectacular. The Alps are insanely beautiful, but insanely dangerous and treacherous and almost unbearable. So he does this. He has thousands and thousands of troops, maybe 30 or so, or 50,000 or so men, depending on who exactly you're counting. And he has about 30 or so war elephants. That's the thing. Like, the Romans are not used to war elephants. So if he can get these elephants into Italy, he can conquer the Romans once and for all. Okay? So he's taking elephants through the Alps. That's insane. And in the middle of winter. And the Romans didn't think. There's no way. No one's ever done this. That's something like Hercules would do or something like that. So they took war elephants through the Alps. Okay? War elephants. And as we all know, they took tactical turtles. They're going to win the battle against the Roman with these tactical turtles. Very, very dangerous. Very, very treacherous. Tactical turtles. So Hannibal Barca, Carthaginian general who will invade Italy with war elephants, he crosses the Alps. This is kind of like what keeps him famous. Like, he does the unthinkable. He does the impossible. Okay, no one thought that anyone could do this, especially with a large army. Now, keep in mind, he lost about 1/3 of his troops getting over there. But once he got across the Alps and he's in actual Roman territory, he does extremely well. Probably the biggest loss that the Romans ever had in their history, and probably one of the biggest losses in a single day, is the Battle of Cannae, or the Battle of Cannae. Only about 10,000 of the 70,000 Roman soldiers survived in a day. So you're looking at 60,000 men died in one day. And kind of what he does is that, like, kind of pincer maneuver or so, where they kind of like let them fall back in, and then look like they're going to losing ground, but essentially it's just kind of all planned, and they just completely encircle the Romans, and the Romans are completely surrounded, and there's no escape for them. So it basically just becomes a circular killing zone. Just Every single battle Hannibal had, he was outnumbered, but he was just so well at his strategy, did his strategy so well, and was able to motivate his men into doing and being in the exact right place at the exact right time, choosing the terrain. He was just a military genius, and because of this, even if he was outmatched, it didn't matter. Like the Romans put legions, they actually doubled the legions they had. Most time when they had fought Hannibal, it had been like 5 or 7 legions. Now they're like, okay, let's have 14 legions, or well, not 14, probably around 14 legions or so, to stop them. And they didn't. They were literally, after this, they were so defeated that they probably should have surrendered. They were thinking about, the senators were thinking about, let's just surrender to Hannibal, and they didn't. Fortunately, they didn't. Otherwise, that would be the end of the story right there. But it continues. Hannibal's kind of gathering kind of like mercenaries along the way and rallying people that hate Rome and want to kind of destroy Rome around the area. A young general from the Romans called Scipio. Scipio will face him, and what Scipio does is he realizes we can't beat Hannibal in the open field, but what we can do is we can cut off his supply line. So he basically doesn't face Hannibal in Italy, and he goes to Spain, and he cuts his supply line off. And then from Spain, Scipio hops over, and he goes down to Carthage and starts attacking Carthage and that area around there. And Hannibal has no other choice but to go back to Carthage to defend his home. Like, he doesn't lose a single battle. Hannibal doesn't lose a single battle on Roman soil. So he's like really good at away games, but he's not going to be so good at home games because he goes back home. And when he goes back home to Carthage, there's the Battle of Zama. It's like the epic battle between this great Roman general Scipio Africanus and this legendary Carthaginian general Hannibal Barca. This is the only time he was ever defeated in battle. Hannibal. Okay. And if you noticed anything about Scipio, he literally gets the name Africanus. So if you conquer an area in Rome as general, that just becomes a part of your name. So if I were to conquer Fredericksburg, I'd be Mr. Shank Fredericksburgis or something like that, or maybe you'd be like Jerry King Georgicus, but it just be added to your name because, oh yeah, you're the guy that conquered King George. Oh yeah, you're the guy that conquered Africa and beat Hannibal. So he becomes legendary after that. Okay. So you would obviously want to write down Hannibal Barca crosses the Alps with war elephants. He's this Carthaginian general. The Battle of Cannae is a really famous battle during the Second Punic War here. Okay, you want to write that down. That's where you could just put Battle of Cannae, 70,000 Romans die. Okay, and then he is defeated at the Battle of Zama by Scipio Africanus. That is important. That kind of ends the Second Punic War. And that's the only time Hannibal was ever defeated. Okay, we will talk about legendary generals. We've talked about Alexander the Great, but this is like the next big, huge military genius that we're talking about. During the Third Punic War, we'll talk about here in a minute, Greece will also be kind of captured in the process here. Okay, and you might as well just we'll hold off on that. Okay, but that's the Battle of Cannae. Okay, in that battle, it's just there's just a complete cluster. Okay, so Carthage, we know that the causes here. Okay, Carthage moved into Spain to recover territory and money. Okay, this is what causes it. So Carthage is already infringing on Roman territory. It's basically based in Spain. Like, Rome knew that Carthage was in Spain, but they're like, okay, we'll just kind of wait till things get closer and closer, and then if they actually do decide to attack us or allies, we'll get involved. Carthage will attack Saguntum. That kind of starts it. Like I said before, that's the start. Saguntum is the city. It's not a person, it's the city. And if they attack the city, they've got to do something, and Rome does. Well, the outcomes of this, the most important things here, you want to write down that Carthage loses Spain. So they were like trying to get Spain so that they could get more territory, so they could get more money, so they could get more power. And then they lose it anyways. Okay, so they're not too happy about that. Carthage must give up their navy. So now they barely had a navy after the First Punic War, and they're known for their navy. Carthage is a seaport city, and now they can't have any navy whatsoever. None. Carthage must give up Rome and give Rome even more money. So they're giving Rome money each time they lose. They're giving up territory every time they lose, and they're losing something else. And in this case, it's their navy. Like I said, that's the Battle of Zama, and they had war elephants, but it was just every time that Hannibal would fight, it would be kind of like a smorgasbord of different personnel, because he would have a bunch of different units, and they're not all Carthaginians. They might be Nubians, they might be some random rebels or mercenaries, and most of the time it was mercenaries. He was like paying people to fight. It's like, hey, I'll give you I don't know, we'll just say $100 to fight in this war, and then if you live, I'll give you another $100. Okay, so there's more incentive, obviously, not just to bail. Doesn't end there, because the Punic Wars are not just one war, not just two battles or two wars. It's actually 3 total wars. So in 149 BCE, in 147 BCE, it's a very short war. So we got about 150 years before Christ. We have the third and final Punic War, and as you can kind of see, it's going to take place in Carthage, and Rome's going to send ships down to destroy Carthage. Okay, so Cato, there's a senator. His name's Cato. Okay, a Roman senator. He calls for Carthage to be destroyed, and he'll say Carthago delande est, which means Carthage must be destroyed. Now, the reason this is kind of funny, and the reason this is kind of interesting, he would say this after everything. He'd be like, Rome needs new roads, Rome needs new schools, and Rome needs to destroy Carthage once for all. He would say this after every speech in the Senate. Like, imagine if you had senators out there that would say Russia must be destroyed after every sentence. And it's basically the whole thing is, furthermore, I believe that Carthage must be destroyed. That's what you'd say after every speech. Like, imagine if you had, instead of like, hell, thank you for your time, you just said Carthage must be destroyed. The point was, he believed that Carthage was rebuilding, and he had been down there and saw what they were doing and how they were becoming more and more of a threat again. And they didn't want a third one, but they wanted to hit them before Carthage became an actual decent force. So Rome already had a strong hatred for Carthage and a desire to destroy them. And so the outcomes here, they just send a bunch of Roman soldiers and ships down there, and it does take them a while, but Carthage will be completely destroyed in the Third Punic War, to the point where there's nothing left. They just level it to the ground, and they do give a valiant effort, Carthage does, but really the only thing left after the Second Punic War is the city of Carthage. They don't really have a whole lot. Rome will enslave the people of Carthage. This is very important, because they're going to have so many people, so many slaves after this, and it's going to kind of ruin their economy. It's going to change Rome forever, because now they're in control of everything. There's no one else to compete with them, and they're going to enslave them, and that's going to be disastrous a little bit later on. Okay. Rome will become the dominant power in the Mediterranean. That's important as well. So there's outcomes there. That's what you need to put down for the Third Punic War. Carthage is destroyed. Rome enslaves the Carthaginians, and now Rome is dominant in the Mediterranean. They call it Mare Nostrum. They call the Mediterranean Sea Mare Nostrum, which means our sea. Like, this is ours now. No one else's. We claim it. Okay? That's the Punic Wars in a nutshell. I mean, that's very quickly what I gave to you. Okay? So just to cover some things, Rome and Carthage in the Punic Wars. Rome and Carthage. Carthage is just south of Rome. Okay? They're in competition for trade. Hannibal will invade the Italian Peninsula. He'll go through Spain, go in through the Alps with war elephants, and will not lose a single battle on Roman soil. But he will lose his home battle at Zama. Three times they'll fight. Three main wars, not 3 times, 3 main wars, and each time Rome wins. And it ends with the destruction completely of Carthage. and it will expand. This is when Rome really starts to get the ball rolling on their empire and their force and the world. When they become the dominant Rome that we know is after the Punic Wars. So this is when the Republic falls, though. This is when democracy kind of dies. Okay, they already kind of were now like an empire, but they just didn't have an emperor. Okay, they had pretty much everything else. They just didn't have an emperor. They had this, representative democracy with some consuls and some senators and their judicial branch with the praetors. Okay, so what happened to the Roman Republic after the Punic Wars? Remember those slaves? Yeah, they're going to come into play here real quick. And if you see here, these are the patricians. Oh, we're so rich, it's ridiculous. Luckily, we have these slaves that will work for free. So all these slaves from Carthage now are completely ruining the economy because slaves are the cheapest labor you can possibly have. Okay, they're the initial, you buy the slaves, some of them, but if you capture them, you already have them, and they are essentially, that's like having money. And they are just flooding the farming market, and they're going to destroy the economy for the small-time farmers. Okay, so these are the Carthaginians. If we wouldn't have lost the war, we wouldn't be slaves. Yeah, they're not doing it based on race. They're not doing it based on gender. They're doing it based on, did we just conquer you? Okay, we conquered you. You're now the slaves of the Romans. Okay. Who would find it difficult to compete with these huge estates? These latifundia, which is like these huge estates, is what a latifundia is, and free labor. How would you compete against this? Like, who would find this very difficult to compete against these huge, massive estates, like these basically giant farms, and free labor? Small-time farmers. So this is a thing that still happens to this day when you have places like Walmart that come in that just, it's so hard to compete, or Amazon, it's so hard to compete that these small-time businesses, they don't stand a chance. So they have to basically close business, and it stinks, but that's kind of how it works, especially this time. So these small-time farmers, a lot of them were former soldiers, because that's what you did if you retired from the military, you went into farming. Okay, it was you would get land, and it'd be a pretty decent deal. Okay, slaves will make up 1/3 of the population. Some estimates have that even more, almost 60%. Some say, but typically a small figure is 1/3 of the population. So that means about 20 million slaves inside the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic at this point. 20 million slaves. America at its height had like 8 million. 20 million at the lowest for the Romans. Okay, so time kind of goes on. You've got about 15 or so years, or even less than that. This is almost immediate, but this is the Gracchi brothers, or the Gracchus brothers, however you want to say it, Tiberius and Gaius. You want to write them down for sure. Okay, there's Tiberius and Gaius Gracchus. They're tribunes or tribunes, however you want to say it. But we know that tribunes, they represent the plebeians. They're the only way plebeians actually have a voice. So this is after the Punic Wars. And these slaves, these Carthaginian slaves, are ruining the economy. All of those small-time farmers, where do they have to go? They got to go into the city. Why do they go to the city? To look for jobs. And the Gracchi, the two brothers, are like, this is going to completely destroy our economy. This is going to just, if we don't do something. So what they did was they'll limit the size of these latifundias, these large estates like a giant like plantation, if you will, or giant farm, if that helps you understand it. And it's all worked by free labor. You can't compete with free. Like, even if you're a small-time farmer, like, I'll work for $1 a day, and you would normally work for $10 a day, it still doesn't matter. If I'm one of these wealthy patricians that have these large estates, and I have one guy that will work for free and one guy that will work for $1, and I don't care about morals, I'll throw my morals out the window. Yeah, I'm going to go with the slave. I'll go with the slave for free. Okay. Two, they'll give land to the poor. So they'll start kind of carving up these estates and giving it to the poor, so that they have a voice, that their land have been kind of stripped from them, and the people loved the Gracchi, because the majority of the populations are plebeians, and they need land, and they need help, as much as help as they can possibly get. Okay? And these two are really the only ones that are helping them out. Gracchi, both of them are assassinated. One is clubbed to death. I believe Tiberius is clubbed to death, I think. And Gaius commits suicide, but basically it's like forced suicide. He basically has no other choice. So people don't, especially patricians, the rich, don't like when poor get their fair share. But you have riots in the street, and it's mad chaos. And I think when Tiberius dies, it's not just him dying, and it's not just him just being, clubbed to death. It's 300 some people that are kind of clubbed to death, defending him, and it's just like an all-out brawl and it's brutal. But this is when you have people standing up for what they believe in. That they believe in things should be more equal, things should be a little more fair, that the rich shouldn't keep getting richer and the poor getting poorer. And you have examples like the Gracchi brothers throughout history, and especially in Rome, that stand up for the little guy, stand up for the person that doesn't have a voice, and that would be the plebeians. Okay. Since there was a government breakdown, so the government's breaking down, it's chaos. There's riots in the street. Rome is packed with people that are just jobless and homeless. Like, imagine if New York City, all the homeless maybe you see in New York City, times 1,000, and then you cram like another maybe 8 million people inside New York, and like most of them are homeless. Yeah, that's pretty much what, like, maybe that's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's pretty much what's going on here in Rome at the time. Okay. Well, since there's a government breakdown, the military starts to break down as well. Okay, and these soldiers will be loyal. Okay, and they're going to be loyal to Roman generals, and this will be very important. Okay, for the next episode of Shankism. Episode 11 will be hopefully soon, but that was Shankism. Oh, yeah.